Welcome back to the Poison Touch Advice Hour, the podcast where some movers and their friends, movers and shakers, dare I say, give you the best and worst advice to deal with all of life's predicaments, even if you are in an empty room because you just moved. But that's okay because podcasting is an audio medium, unless you're paying $5 a month over at the Patreon. That's patreon.com/poisontouchpod. Ding. I am joined in this lovely month of March by, dare I say it, a fan favorite. It was a lot of good feedback on that episode. One of the fan favorites. It's like you and David are definitely some fan faves. The THEAFROB is back. B, how you doing?
Oh my goodness. I think you need an applause button. The THEAFROB is back.
I'll put it in post. It's there. Imagine.
Right. Thank you. Okay. I'm doing great. It's flattering to know that I'm a fan favorite. I mean, up there with David, that's very flattering. But not surprising. And you know what? To your audience, to your listeners, I say you're welcome.
Yeah.
But also, I'm very happy to be here because anytime we get to spend with you, Jake, is always a joy. And then I see we got our arms out today. So we're giving a little, when I come on the platform, it's time to get a little sexy.
The weather's getting better. This is the time to do it.
Sunshine's coming out ever so slowly. The weather is getting better.
Ever so slowly. But we'll get there.
I don't know what with the monsoons that's been going on with all this rain, but I'll take it.
I had to get a bike cover because now my bike can't live indoors because I'm on like the second floor and I don't want to carry it in. So I got myself a little bike cover and a bigger bike lock, and now she's all wrapped up and pretty.
Outside?
I hate to say it. I don't like leaving outside. It's not like the rooftop.
Oh, okay.
So they got to climb to get to it. It's a whole thing.
Okay. Well, we ain't going to help them out by telling them where it's
exactly. Yeah, you don't need to know where it's at. Let's just hop right in, shall we?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Let's do it. Also, I apologize for the lapse in episodes, dear listeners. As I said up top, I was moving, but now that I'm fully settled, my Wi-Fi is working because it was out for a full week. We're back. Content is coming back. The Library of Alexandria will continue over at the Patreon if you want to hear some lost media stories that didn't make it to the podcast. And me and Amario are back to doing Baby Daddy's Our Review podcast for The Love of Dills. So that's wrapping up as well. But let's hop into these questions.
Let's do it.
First one is from Gray Sexual. It's a sex and love question. And they write, I'm struggling with the gay dating sphere while being on the ace spectrum. I'm not entirely sure where I fall in it, and it's not really that important to me. I just know that I am not really interested in anal sex and only peripherally interested in other forms of non-anal sex. When I do rarely have sex, it's only because I want to feel close to the partner and make them happy, and that's a choice I make and am fine with. The problem is that while I am okay with that being what it is, as soon as it becomes known to any potential partner, they pull away and disconnect from me. Is the ace spectrum that conflicting with being gay? I've quite honestly gotten tired of investing into talking and dating men just for it to end in this way. Why is me not, quote unquote, wanting sex such a deal breaker for gay men? I know it sounds overly simplistic, but I make my identity known on all profiles. Some people ask about it, others don't, but it's not a secret I'm hiding to reveal later and then being upset about it. I want to think it's something else, but when this topic comes up, that's always where it ends. I've been flexible, dated outside of my normal type, and have exhausted my local pool. Even Tinder has run out of people to swipe on. I've only ever had two people be upfront about it being a deal breaker for them, even after I say that I'm okay with an open or poly relationship so that their sexual needs can be met. I'm mostly just looking for advice on accepting that I might not end up with anybody and that will be okay. But also, what is up with my experience being like this? Oof, let me take a drink.
This is the first question.
We're starting deep. We're starting
We're starting real deep. I mean, not to make this person feel like that their question like blah, blah, blah. But I was expecting like some warm up questions, like
We're
Like, what do I do if I'm a bad actor? You know what I mean? But actually, I think I have something insightful to share. I mean, I think the gays get a bad rap for, the hypersexuality in the community.
Mhm.
And when I was in college, I was doing a senior project. Um, my senior thesis for my Africana Studies major was focused on gender sexuality studies, and I wrote this whole paper about how Black gay men specifically, sort of survived these different systems of oppression around homophobia and racism, et cetera, et cetera. And a big part of that research looked at sort of sexuality as a cultural question, and how like our social discourse of sexuality is very much informed by a colonial lens, a Western
Mhm.
European
Mhm.
lens, right? Because that's who colonized the Americas, and the ideas of virtue and morale and all of that that we still live with today are very much rooted in that colonial history. And so that history came up with its own set of rules and language to describe human behaviors and such like that. And basically, what I'm saying is, the gays have been demonized in terms of sexuality. To be a homosexual, to be gay, to be queer, whatever, is to be sexually deviant. And for me, I think as a community, we sometimes, right, a lot of us internalize that. We grew up with that because
Uh-huh.
all of us are indoctrinated into these cultural aspects because, this is what informs our worldview, especially over here in the US. And so for me, it's kind of difficult to find like the line because it's blurred, if not like totally obliterated between like how much of that deviance or prescribed deviance is from this outside thing versus what we internalize, and how do we overcome that as a community? Because I find when gays talk about like sex and hooking up, a lot of people have negative experiences. Would you say that's
100%. You
a
could
lot of people?
throw a stone in a gay bar, you will find someone who's got a negative experience regarding sex and dating.
And the common conversation I feel is people saying, "Oh, gays just want to have sex; they want to go and do relationships seriously." And then you get those gays, who always tweeting every TikTok, and it kind of gets a little boring.
Yeah.
Why does anybody want to be in a relationship with me? All the gays are whores, and nobody wants a
Or
relationship with
why can't I make gay friends? Everybody wants to fuck me. Like, come on, it's
me.
so
Right.
tired. We're over that. Which isn't
Right.
what this person is saying, but
Yeah, I
I just don't
digress.
want them thinking that we're like coming at them because we're not. But exactly.
Yeah, I'm not coming at you. I'm not coming at you, gray sexual. I'm leading up to a point, which I think it's
Yes.
a fair thing that you raise, because I think there's a degree of truth to it. Essentially, I think there is a lot of hypersexuality
Mhm.
that is around, but I don't think it's because as gays we're naturally more sexually promiscuous or deviant or more apathetic towards people's feelings than non-queer people, was essentially why I did that whole setup. But I do think a big issue is we're disconnected as a community. And the reason I see that being is because so many of us, because like sexuality, especially for people assigned male at birth, for people who identify as men growing up, and patriarchy, it surveils us and it surveils the way we engage in our relationships. And so
Mhm.
you have other people around you looking at you, straight men who are like, oh, no homo, or that's sus, or something like that. So all of that informs the way we as a community deal with sexuality. And so many people come up closeted, and basically their queer experiences are very much an isolated one. And then when you come out, right, you're kind of like flung into this broader community, and not all of us have those kinds of relationships where people are getting to know each other like very intimately. I think a lot of people are just sort of jumping right into the deep end of like gay culture and thinking that sex is the way to express that, and
Yeah.
it's not necessarily the case. sex is great for who it's great for. But I think there's a lot of people, especially like now, who are identifying as queer and want homoerotic romantic relationships. But the sex aspect, for whatever reason, is something that people are divesting from. This idea that there has to be a top and a bottom, or that it has to be this sort of penetrative sex. And I think that's a radical move in queer liberation and in
Yeah.
sexual liberation in general. So I don't think you're going to end up alone. I don't think you're
Yeah.
going to end up by
That's not like the
yourself.
heart of this. I don't think you're gonna end up alone. And I think there are people who are, like you said, divesting themselves from sex being A, penetrative, B, with coming being the end product, you know?
Right.
So I yeah, but continue.
Yeah, right. It's not the end goal. And, not to get too much of my own business, but I've, have been seeing someone who's opened my own perspectives around the world of sex and intimacy and things like that. And when you refocus it from a physical act, right, engaging in this sort of like physiological process in which the goal at the end is to have this sort of orgasmic release. I think when you have a partner who you have that conversation with and you talk about and ask yourselves and each other, why do we need to have this kind of intimacy? What does intimacy look like in our relationship between us? What do we want? You kind of have to have that brutal and honest conversation, and also be prepared for, just because someone says, oh, I've never done that, I never had that, I never tried that before, it doesn't mean that it's like impossible. Sometimes you just have the conversation and let people think about it, let people explore. Maybe you gotta do a little bit more guiding. And maybe that seems unfair that you want somebody to be there and it all be figured out, but that's not relationships, babe. And whether it's sex or it's something else, you're just gonna have to find some calibrating. Try to fight that idea that, oh, I'm not gonna find anybody because I'm too different, because these demographic of people who are my dating pool are not going to be into what I'm into. But guess what, babe? There's a lot of people in this community, and there are a
Yeah.
lot of people, a lot of things. And, I'm definitely sure that you face your challenges and prejudices from gays, and all of that's valid. I'm not, trying to downplay any of that. But the message essentially is keep trucking, girl. Keep going out there and stick to your guns. If that's who you are, if that's what you want, sometimes you got to stick to your guns. And when people say, oh, no, that's not what I want. Okay, cool, great. Let's move it along and, move on to the next person. Because I promise you, that person is most certainly out there.
Yeah.
Or those people, it's not just one, lots of people are out there. And, you just got to find your way to your community.
Yeah, you can find yourself a side who is like like peripherally interested in non-anal sex, who's in an open relationship and it would be willing to get their rocks off with
Right.
someone else. Like these people exist, and I understand. You have your experiences and whatnot. I don't want to downplay that because I'm sure it is very hard, but I wouldn't give up because these people are out there. And they might be in the big city where shit happens a little different, where people are on the margins of, what we deem normal for the gay community. You know what I mean? But because they didn't say if they were out in the country or in a city, but I can understand being like, if I'm in the country and there's only a certain amount of people around me and none of them are doing what I'm doing, I'm tired. I just want to give up, So I can understand feeling that, but
Sorry, girl, there was a helicopter that just flew
oh,
over. It gets a little noisy over here.
no
Um,
fun.
yeah, just stick to your guns, and also really don't be afraid to challenge people in a healthy way. I mean, if there is somebody who you meet and like you're not quite on the same page, right? Like you know, ex- it, bring people into your worlds, and it kind of requires you to be vulnerable. It requires them to be vulnerable. And I feel like no matter what, like that's just the basis of relationships. Like you're not gonna really, even if you are on the same page with one thing, like sexually or asexually, it could be missing the mark somewhere else. And it's exhausting. You're going to have to always be calibrating. You're going to have to always be kind of like figuring it out because as you meet new people, you have to treat every person differently because they come with their own little bag of goodies. They come with their own little bag of nuts. Everybody is their own little bundle of insanity. And you just have
Mhm.
to deal with it and roll with the punches. But most importantly, don't give up. And that's just with everything in life, relationships, work, passion, all of that. Just don't give up. Just keep pushing, keep going, and focus on just living your life. And I think that's what's going to invite, all of those things. When you are living authentically to yourself, and you are investing and reinvesting that energy and love into yourself, then those things will fall into place and they'll come to you. So if you shut that off before you give the world a chance and before you give yourself a chance to experience new places, new people, then you may end up alone, right? And I think that's the only way people end up alone is when you
Because
give
they
up and you
want to
set
be alone.
afar. Right. So just stay open, mama. And you never know. Side is very in right now.
Side is very in. And I'm not even saying that you have to find someone necessarily who is also on the ace spectrum. I, there is a world where you're with somebody who is allosexual, who enjoys sex. You really get to know each other. You really like each other. You have this conversation. And they might be like, I've never done that before, but I'm open to trying because I like you and I want to spend time with you. And so it really, to give up like this without try, because dating is hard, and it's hard for everybody, asexual or allosexual. It's hard for us all out here. But you really find that person who's willing to take that step with you, read a couple books, learn a bit, really open their vision to something that they haven't tried before. You never know, they might end up actually liking it, and then you're all happy.
Yeah. And everybody should really do that work to figure out, some people are having sex and they don't like it themselves, but they feel like
Mm-hmm.
this is what people do. This is what everybody does. You just have to ask yourself those questions. What is it that I like? What is it that I want to do? How open to exploring am I? And just be open to discover those new things because a lot of things will take you by surprise.
And there's also a lot of people in sexless relationships that love each other, that have a good time. A lot of y'all's parents are in sexless relationships. Like
Hey.
these things exist. People are in these relationships. So yeah. Do you think that the A spectrum really that conflicting with being gay? That's something else they wrote in here, and I kind of want to tackle that a little bit.
I will tackle away, darling.
I, we kind of tackled this a little up top when you were talking about the hypersexuality within the gay community, which is something that we talk about a lot, all the time. People are bringing it up. That being said, there is a place for people in the A spectrum in the gay community. Not everybody, we talk about everyone being hypersexual, but in the reality out in the world, not everybody is that. Sure, the gays fuck a lot, but not everybody is partaking. So
Right.
it doesn't conflict. I think it might conflict with the general idea that people have of being gay, like online or in media, is always hop on Grindr, have sex within a minute, blah 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 blah. But that doesn't mean that has to be your experience being gay. It doesn't have to be your community's experience being gay. That is just one way of being. And part of being queer is finding new ways of being. So even if it was conflicting, the whole part of the queer experience is finding a new way to be yourself. So
Yeah. I also think the more I'm in our culture, the more I'm realizing that a lot of people at a point just kind of stop caring and kind of give yourself permission to not care about is how I'm feeling about my sexuality and my identity not in line with the dominant culture or the dominant community. I'll let you in on a little secret, babe. None of these homosexuals know what they're doing. None of us know what
none.
we're doing. None of us are experts in this. The best we can do is research and reflect ourselves, try to heal our little traumas and histories and past. And, as we're learning that and being gracious with ourselves as we learn that, and trying to invite romance and friendship and all of those things into our lives and trying to minimize the harm we cause other people by minimizing the trauma that we have within ourselves, that's all we could really hope for. There's no community meeting saying this is what the agenda is. And
As
I
much
can
as they
understand.
want us to believe that we have a meeting with an agenda.
Okay, as much as they want us to believe there is an agenda, I have my own gay agenda, and it does involve brainwashing the masses of America into voguing fiercely the house down.
Yeah, I'm here for that.
Um, but yeah, basically, it's like it can feel very isolating. The gay community, communities in general, for people can feel isolating for different reasons and whatnot. And sometimes we get in our own head and we're like, I'm really different, right? And it's easy for us to position ourselves as against everyone else because it's easy to imagine that all these other people are really simplistic and think one way and move one way because we have a habit of trying to rationalize things,
Of
right?
course.
As human beings, that's our greatest strength, but also our greatest like fault. The truth is, and this is how I kind of look at life in general, is that it's all not as simple as we would like it to be. It's all very complicated and everybody has their own feelings and things like that. So it's not that asexuality, the ace spectrum, or, any sort of sexual identity, queer or not queer, within the gay community that's not centered around penetrative like sex or any of that. It's not that it's so like marginal within the community, so like insignificant that like people are like, what is this? Like you're a
Mhm.
weirdo, like you're gonna be by yourself forever. It's just that nobody really knows what the hell is going on, which makes it so much more important when you do discover something as significant as saying, this is how I identify. Like, I am on this asexual spectrum and I don't want to do these things. All power to you, sis. Now stick to your guns. And that doesn't need to be defined or understood by this community. It just needs to be understood by you.
Mhm.
And the more of us who are resolute about who we are, and being confident about that and being confident and trusting ourselves and our decisions and how we identify and just being honest about that, I think the easier as a community we can engage with one another much more gently and approach each other with a lot more compassion and understanding. Everybody just has to be honest and say, I don't really know what's going on, girl, but if you're asexual, like that's T. And if you're trying to get with me and you're asexual and I'm somebody who's like, oh, I really enjoy, these kinds of like physical intimacy, but I really like you, I'm gonna explore that with you. And that
Yeah.
has been my experience. I've had those conversations with people where I'm like, oh, I've only done this, and you like this, and when you like someone and you want to make it work, there is a middle ground. When you have that chemistry, there is a middle ground. And then also it's not that deep. At least I felt it's not that deep. Like I don't need to do this a certain kind of way. And if you find yourself or others who are really staunchly sticking to like, oh, I need to do this the wrong way, it's a red flag to me. People who are not willing to embrace things that are new or different and step out of their comfort zone within reason. And I think if you're dating somebody and they say they're asexual and they're trying to encourage you to promote like non-penetrative forms of sex, right? That's something like you could step out of your comfort zone for
Mhm.
if this is someone you like with conversation and stuff like that. I think it's those things are really easy to do, but people in general have to check their egos and check their traumas and their internalized stuff and do the work. And if you're not finding those people, that just means those people are still on their journey. That's fine. That's okay. We're all on our journeys. And tell them you want to find somebody who's on a similar path as you and know that about themselves. And sometimes that means piecing out because at the end of the day, gray sexual, I'm not speaking for you, but I would imagine it would be more satisfying to be by yourself for a while and be comfortable in your sexuality than to compromise that very important part of yourself that, for other people for the sake of their comfort. Your happiness and who you are shouldn't come at the cost of someone else's comfort.
Exactly.
Um, So that's what I say.
And also, everyone's relationships are different. If people are saying that, like, oh, I can't do this because that's not something I've ever seen before, that doesn't mean that your relationship would be wrong. Or if it's an open relationship, but they don't understand or like they're not familiar with what that would look like, that's for the two of y'all to work out with each other. There's no wrong way to go about it as long as both of you are being honest, communicative, and really helping each other on the journey. It's a two-person street and both of y'all got to walk it together.
Yeah. Period.
Yeah.
We ate that.
We did. Best of luck, Gray Sexual. Let us know. Keep us updated. I want to hear more. I really hope that you don't give up. And there's nothing wrong with being alone for a while. Being single, fantastic, love it. But giving up and just being like, I'm going to be alone forever. I think you owe it to yourself to give yourself a little more grace when it comes to this.
Right. And also ask yourself, why are you so afraid to be alone? Yeah, you got to think about that too, Miss Great Sexual.
Drop that.
We have to ask ourselves the hard questions. Why is that such a source of fear? Because that may be something that you don't even realize is informing how your relationships are going. There are things in us that we aren't even cognizant of ourselves, but when you say them, like sometimes you can't hear yourself speak. And I'm not judging because I'm like this too. We don't understand, but when you say like, oh, I'm going to end up alone, that for me is something that sounds very significant. That's an interesting thing to explore. Maybe not something to fix, maybe not something to unpack, but definitely to explore. Is being alone, is that the worst thing that could happen to you? And if you feel like that, then, ask yourself maybe why that is.
And there's a big difference between I'm okay with being alone and I'm going to be alone. I think when you reach that point of confidence with yourself where you're like, I don't need someone to complete me. It's perfectly fine if I'm single. It's fine if I'm alone. That is such a different mentality from, oh, I'm going to end up alone. There's a power in being like, I don't actually need someone to complete me. And when you get to that point, other people can sense that confidence. And that is alluring. That's attractive,
Yes, it is. Should I read the next one?
Yeah, let's get into it.
This one is from Blown Out Billy. It is another sex and love question. And it reads, a hookup recently asked me for advice on how sex could be better, and it made me feel some type of way, non-derogatory in parentheses. What's the best way to give advice on such a personal topic? Because I feel like anything you say could hurt.
So I'm taking this as like they basically asked for like notes, on like their hookup. And I think if this is somebody that you have a rapport with, that you're able to talk with, maybe you've hooked up a couple times, maybe you're friendly, there's that communication line should be open to be like, I really liked when you did this, or it feels really good when I receive this, it's all in how you frame it. It's not like, that was terrible, I hate that, let's never do that again. It's, this feels good to me. I like when you did this. I could use more of this. Something that I enjoy is this. It's all in the framing of how you say it.
Yeah, I agree. It starts on the frame of how you say it. Definitely be honest. There's no need to, I feel like if you're concerned about saying something to hurt their feelings, then you're kind of already saying a lot because maybe you didn't enjoy that experience as much as you wanted. Mm-hmm. And I think recognize if somebody is asking you for a few, because I'm the kind of person, I will ask, How was that? How is this going for you? Partly because I have a reputation to maintain, but also because like you're a whole other person. So I do want to know if you're enjoying this, if you feel comfortable. And I don't think that's something that shouldn't be something that makes you nervous. I think that's something that should be a lot more common practice for everybody in general, just like having the conversation. And that would give me personally a sense of comfort. It's like, okay, you care about like what I think and how I feel about this experience. And then I would say, well, Did it seem like I was uncomfortable? Or, sometimes people are just trying to recalibrate themselves. And I don't think it's all that in a bag of chips. Just be honest and say, um, whatever the notes are, too fast, too hard, not hard
Yeah.
enough. And I don't think it needs to be like, oh, you suck at sex. I did a research program in undergrad, and this is
Okay.
going to be a weird way to apply this logic.
Now let's do it.
But people used to present their research, and my mentor would say, there's a criticism sandwich, right? You have the first slice of bread, which you should start off with something as a positive note when you're
Yes.
critiquing something. Here are the things that you did really well. These are the
Hmm.
things that I liked. And then the meat and the cheese and the lettuce and all of that is where you get into the areas of improvement. And that conversation could look so like, here's what I like. So if you're asking, instead of advice on how to be better at sex, I can't tell you how to be better at sex, but I could tell you what I like and what I enjoy and what you could do to do better, or not better, or what you could do to
Yeah.
just satisfy me. So it's X, Y, and Z.
I
I
can tell
like
you
this.
how to be good at sex with me. I can't tell you how to be good at sex with everybody, but for me, I can tell you how to get it there.
And then with the last bread on top, and it was something else good. You could reiterate that point. That's just a guide to just give people kind of like criticism, healthy criticism. It helps us like not jump right into the negatives. Say, this is what you're doing well, that works for me. Here's where we can improve, and things like that.
Yep.
And that's great. So, you just have to figure out what that is for yourself, and see if they're open to that. I wouldn't ask someone advice on how to be better at like sex in general. Maybe I don't know exactly how they phrased it, but you could check in with people, and it's no biggie. Like,
Because we're all different people. What's going to work for Jake isn't going to necessarily work for B. What's going to work
well,
for
I think we should find out.
well, and
What works for us, Jake?
that is a very good question. What does work?
Michael's gonna beat my ass one day. I need to stop. I need to stop playing with people's mans. No,
he in the other room. He gonna come in. What you said?
right. What's going on in here?
Yeah, but honestly, I think it's honestly good to check in with a hookup that you've been seeing or a new person because everyone's different. Some people like it a little rough, some people not so much. So find what is the best for the both of y'all. I can't tell you, like I said earlier, I can't tell you how to be good at sex in general. I can tell you how to be good at sex with me.
Right. And talk about it before too. Talk about it during. Sometimes
During, hell yeah. Let's
during.
change.
This not working for me.
And that's okay. Switch it up.
Let's play to our strong suits.
Yeah.
And it could be something, you can come at like, you could frame it like in a humorous way. It doesn't have to be so serious. I mean, I think if you have consent and you have like continuous consent, then everything around there, like just get comfortable. Just say it, and I find that people will appreciate the transparency and the open and honestness. It's exhausting trying to figure out what somebody is thinking and how they feel about something. You'll drive yourself up a wall. Just open your mouth and just say something and talk about it. And, don't make it a thing. Things are only a thing when you make them a thing. So don't make it a thing.
Like people would rather appreciate you, the two of you not wasting all this time doing something that you're not into than being like, actually, let's do this because this feels way better. And people could feel that, you know what I mean? Like they could feel when the vibe isn't fully there. So save everybody the trouble. If it's not working for you, say that. And you don't got to do it, in a mean way, like do the sandwich, you're a really good kisser, but I don't like when you put 3 fingers in my butthole. But, and then another thing of good at the end, right?
Right.
There's ways to phrase it.
What gets you going? What gets you excited? What's something you're curious about? I mean, that also, takes a level of like comfort and, you could work your way up to that. But give yourself like a freedom to like explore and, just, figure each other out. Like, I think just try to make it something fun because Like it's just there's too much. We all have too much going on in our lives for a topic like sex to like weigh so much like down on us, right? Am I bad at it? Am
Right.
I good at it? Am I gonna find the right person? But I mean, it's all exhausting. It just needs to be, girl, what you like?
Yeah. And also, this is something to explore, not just with other people, but with yourself. Explore your body. Get to know what makes you feel the best. So that when, if somebody does ask you what feels good, what do you like, you have things prepared.
Right.
The last thing we want is, well, what are you into? You know, have a couple
Mhm.
things. Learn what
Right.
makes you feel the best.
Right.
Yeah. But Billy, update us. List
Right.
us the exact things that you told. Like, list us what makes you feel good. We want to hear all these things.
Right. Billy, tell that bitch you want your back blown out.
Uh-huh. In all the
Blown out,
ways that they can
Billy.
do that. In every
Let
way
me
we can
know.
accomplish that. Yep. This next one is from the voice. Wait, let me take a sip. Coffee sip. And if you're on the Patreon and you saw us sip your coffee, take a sip of your coffee too.
Take a sip of your coffee. Listen, I know it's 5:30.
Take your
Take a
coffee
sip of that
sip.
coffee. It's the
Uh-huh.
weekend. They were like, you're drinking coffee so late. It's the weekend. We got things to do tonight.
There is shit to do, money to be made. It is St. Patrick's Day weekend. I have a busy, busy weekend ahead of me bartending.
Mm.
So yes,
I'm
I'll be
gonna be
having
mostly
coffee.
in the house. I'm not. I fuck with you, Ireland. I fuck
It's a
with you.
crazy day. It is
But it's a
crazy.
lot. It's a lot. And
Say
I don't
less.
I don't got it in me like I used to. I'd be ready to go down, go to
Well,
sleep.
it also doesn't help that the girls start drinking at 10 a.m. and go until 5 a.m., you know?
It just makes me think like I'm like, which is nothing wrong with like, slowing down, stuff like that. But 21, 22, 23, like I just had an energy, like I could go brunch, like well, back to back.
Yeah.
And I still have a good stamina, you know what I mean? Like it's fine, but I'm definitely as I'm getting older, as I'm aging, which is a beautiful thing. A lot of the gays are afraid of. The gays are like, oh my God, you're 50 years old. Girl, first of all, look at me. I've seen my grandparents. I'm not worried about a goddamn thing. Unless I start picking up a crack. Like, black don't crack unless it's crack.
Amen.
So yeah, I value partying, going out, having a good time, yes, but the 3 days, like I'll go out and I'll be out all night on a Saturday night, baby. You won't see me the weekend after that.
Yeah.
I'm taking it slow, okay?
You gotta
Because
temper it, Like, my body can only do so much. Also, I just don't like, this is just me. I don't like not being in control of my body. I don't like being messy in public. I feel embarrassed. I'm like, you didn't see me yesterday. So for me, I do it in moderation. I become a whisper
um,
of a problem every so often, but just a
a whisper
whisper.
of a
Just a
problem. I love
whisper.
it. You got to take your time. You got to, I mean, and it depends on like, who you are and how you handle yourself. Like, I'm at a point where I'm like, I know what is going to do what to me. And I know if I'm going to have a tequila kind of night, if I'm having a Hennessy kind of night, if it's a 420 kind of night, it depends on what kind of night it is. I don't, me being me, I don't think I'll get like downright sloppy because I blacked out once and that's a story. And it was
Mm-mm.
the summer after my first year of college. And I was like, oh, I'll never do this again because blacking out is scary.
It's
I woke up,
terrifying.
I saw me, like people sent me photos and I was like taking pictures of people, remembered none of it. And I was like, oh, I was like, I can't do that. But also the hangover that happened afterwards, oh, I was in that bed. I was like, I'm never doing that again. I'm never doing it again.
Vicious.
And then, if I go out now and I go like really hard, it's gonna take me a couple days to recover. And I got too much going on. I go to the gym 4 times a week. I gotta go to work. I gotta get on Sexy Jake's podcast. I gotta write this script. I'm writing two scripts. I got too much to do. And a bad hangover will throw your whole week off. And if my week gets thrown off, then the month is thrown off. And it's a whole thing to get everything back on track. So that's why I'm like, I'll be out for a little bit, but at a certain point, I'm start drinking my water.
Mm-hmm.
I might hit a little pen, a little gummy or something like that. Come on down and take my ass in the house. 1, 2 a.m. Unless I'm in Miami, then I'm willing to get a little bit more crazy. If I'm on vacation, then it's okay. But I still take the next 1 to 2 days off so I can recover, sleep.
A lot of people need to have that self-awareness to know when it's time to get in the house. A lot of people don't got that. And I'll say this because I just learned this. Apparently, Chicago St. Patrick's Day is the largest St. Patrick's Day celebration outside of Dublin, Ireland. So, biggest in the world. Mm-hmm. So, it's going to be massive.
We got a lot of Irish people here.
We do.
Bro, they don't die for no reason.
And shout out to them. But know when it's time to go home. There's no shame in being like, I got to go.
Like, hang it up, girl. And stop. And those people who peer pressure your friends, they can't hang. When they're trying to leave, don't one more shot them. Don't let them get in their Uber and let them go.
Just because they're going, don't mean y'all gotta go, okay?
Because okay. I walk down that Halsted Strip sometimes, and I'm like, girl, get in the house.
Go home, baby.
Go home, because it's just not cute at a certain point.
Mm-hmm. Jaws tweaking, eyes looking crazy, people falling down, getting in fights. Let's go home.
Let's all go.
Let's go home.
Sometimes I'm in the bar, I'm in the club, I'm dancing, and I'm like, you know what? I actually don't want to be here anymore. And I go.
100%.
And everybody know I'm good for it too. Oh, B, you only been here for 30 minutes. Yeah, I thought I could do it. My vibe is telling me to go in the house.
Yeah, listen to that. Listen to that. And that's good. That wasn't a question, but I think it's important that we tackled that,
It's important to talk about. Listen to your inner voice that says, bitch, go home.
Yeah, and although this episode will come out after St. Patrick's Day, this is evergreen advice. This is good to take no matter what the holiday, no matter what the weekend. This could be just a regular weekend.
Mm-hmm.
This is important to know. But this next question is from Voice from Beyond. They write, it's a general advice question. A dear friend of mine passed away several months ago, and I've had a lot of trouble coming to terms with the sudden loss. The friendship we had was an extremely sexual friendship, but that's not to say we weren't also extremely close platonically as well. I know a lot of people can't wrap their heads around a sexually active, healthy friendship that isn't also romantic, but it came to us so easily it worked very well. Just now, I was cleaning through different things on my phone, and I came across a sexual voice memo from him. Upon hearing his beautiful voice, I immediately broke down in tears. Every reminder of him still shreds through me very painfully and overwhelms me with grief. I dare not listen to these memos with any sexual intent. It just doesn't seem morally correct, but there is still no denying that they are sexually explicit. It feels like I should delete these, and yet I struggle over the delete button. I don't have much to remember him by at all. He wasn't a fan of pictures and was very intent on living in the current moment. Maybe I'm weird for even having to ask this question, but what should I do with these memos? I feel if I rush to delete them, then his voice will truly be gone forever and it cannot be undone. I don't even think I will listen to them again, but I also know he would laugh for several minutes straight if he knew. If he knew I had these and encouraged me to play them on a loudspeaker at his grave for even more laughs. Maybe I'm making this more complex than it needs to be, but I guess that's why I'm asking the question here. What should I do? I'll say this. If he would want you to play them at his grave, if he would want you to keep them, the answer is there. I'm not going to tell you what you should or should do with someone because I don't know their wishes. But if they would have wanted you to hold on to them, play them for a laugh even, and I'm not saying you got to play him at a loudspeaker at his grave, but if that's the kind of stuff he would wanted, do that.
Mm-hmm. I would say, first and foremost, sorry for your loss.
Yes, sorry for your loss.
Because that's heavy. And, I'll share a personal anecdote where when I was in high school, when I was a spring chicken, I was friends with somebody whom we had, it was like 15, 16 years old. We had a pretty close friendship. It wasn't sexual. It was never sexual. But there was romantic feelings there. We were on the wrestling team together for the short amount of time that I was on the wrestling team.
Okay, come on,
and he was a really good friend. And the person who I consider that I had like my first romantic attraction to, before him, I was like, when you're that young, you're thinking about like sexuality and things and all that different ways, but I hadn't felt very romantically attracted to anyone at that point. So until I met him, and he was really sweet, and he was so shy. He was so shy. He didn't really like talk to anybody. And so I felt really good that he would talk to me and stuff like that. And I remember once we were like, because he lived pretty close by, and we were leaving from school, and I was walking in my direction to go home. He was walking his direction to go home. And he was like, gave me a hug, which was like fine. We usually hug, but then he held me there. He held me there, and then he was like, wasn't letting it go. And now, I was a petite ting. I'm still a petite ting, but I wasn't even like, I was scrawny. I was like this big. So I was like, oh, I was like, what? Let me go. I might punch you. And I realized he was trying to kiss me, but I got so scared because I was like, oh, we're outside. I'm still figuring all this stuff out. So I was like, okay, girl, peace out, bye, and walked on home. And, we continued to be friends after that. But shortly afterwards, he was sent to military school because he didn't have a great relationship with his mother, and his family at large, but his mother in particular. And I never saw him again. Never saw him again, but we had such a great relationship. We had such a great friendship. And, he made me feel seen. And 2022, something came over me. I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to see what this person is up to. And so when I Googled his name, the first thing that came up was his obituary, and he had passed. And I share that story because I feel I can relate to grief in that sense, because I would love to hear that person's voice again. I would love to hug that person again. I would love to be like, what happened in this time where, you got sent away for your family. You couldn't contact anybody. He never really was big on social media. So it was just like really fell off of the radar. And grief is a very powerful thing. Because I remember when I saw that obituary, and I subsequently ended up going to visit, his grave, because I found out where his plot was, and all of that. It's heavy. It really transforms you in a way that can feel destructive, and sometimes transformation can be a destructive process. But you aren't destroyed. And you have to be gentle with yourself in that process. And you have to remember that. So I don't think it's weird that you don't want to delete these voice notes.
Of course.
Sure, they're in a sexual context, but it's not like, this is a memento of someone you had a very close relationship with. And that's the thing. We hold on to things and things like that from people whom we've lost, whether, if we have something to remember them by. I didn't have any personal objects from this person. I didn't have any voice notes. All I have is that person's obituary and, the site where they're buried. So every now and then I can, go visit and pay respects. But I don't think it's weird. And be gracious, like, with yourself. There is no really correct way to grieve. Like, for yourself that you're listening to those memos to hear the sound of a voice and not to do anything salacious with it. And that's something that's very deeply personal. And I find that as you go through that grieving process, you will be able to need to hear those memos less. Don't rush your grieving process. Don't stay in it forever, but just trust that you will evolve and you will grow. And, you won't need to hear that voice however many times you're like listening to it. And if you feel like that when the time comes that you are ready to delete it, then that's what you'll do. You will know. But if you're not deleting it, if you go to delete it and your finger is still hovering over that button, you can't bring yourself to do it, that's okay. Sit with that. Sit in that for a while. There's nothing wrong with missing people. Lean into that grief, lean into those emotions, because that's what's going to heal you. That's what's going to help you move forward. And you also have to remember that we are a species, and a lot of us in our cultures, we honor our loved ones who have passed. And they're still with us. And the funny thing about technology, about media, is that they get to be with us in ways that historically, once someone has passed, they haven't been with us before. So it feels even closer when you can look at a video of someone or have a voice memo from them. You know what I mean? When way back when all people had were their memories, maybe some personal affects, a letter. But it makes sense, right? It makes sense why you want to hear this person's voice again. So be gentle with yourself. And I'm sorry that that happens. It is something that is very painful. I mean, this is someone whom I cared about a lot. The person from my past who I haven't spoken to in years. And when I found out that news, like I cried, like I felt devastated because I had cared about this person so much. For me, it all makes sense and it's very understandable. And do what you got to do, girl, to make it. This life is hard enough. When having a hard day and you want to hear that person's voice, it might bring you a laugh, and that laughter, will release some serotonin in your brain, and you can move forward. So, yeah, girl, you got it, and it's okay. No, I don't think anybody here thinks you're weird.
Yeah, of course. Also, sorry for your loss as well. But I think this is similar to the situation with gray sexual, where no one can tell you the exact right way to live your life. And in gray sexual's case, it was about relationships, and in this case, it's about how you're grieving. No one can tell you the right way to do it, And if people try to, come at you for listening to these voice memos, I feel like, how would they know unless you told them and they found out, So B, I just don't think is any of their business, which it isn't. So yeah, I don't think there's any rush to delete them. This is like you said, one of the last things that you have from this person. Just leave it there. Even if you take it off your phone and put it in an archive somewhere on a flash drive or something, just so it's there if you ever really, really need to hear this person's voice. I don't think it's wrong to keep the momentum.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Yep. And we love you, sending you love.
Of course, yes, sending you love. We are going to end the questions here. We're going to take a break, and we are going to be right back with Advice to the Stars, where we're going to talk a bit about some celebrity shenanigans and see what's been going on in the world.
Ciao. What is this Steve Rogers confession?
We could read this confession if we really wanted to, because I was gonna do it, but I was like, I don't know. The vibe change from the previous question to this is a little crazy. Let's just read it.
I mean, these are some good ones in here.
There are some good ones here that frankly, I'm just gonna have to wait till next episode, but that's okay.
That's all right.
That's okay. We can read the Steve Rogers one. This is very quick. Steve Rogers writes a confession. I typically
hold on. There's an ambulance that's honking and going by with the sirens. Okay. I just want to pass it for the sound. I went to film school, girl. So every time
anything,
something's recording, and that's because they're like down there, but they pass right in front. And I know the mic is really good at focusing here, but I can't stand it. And it's the trauma of film school. Just like I used to boom out for people. And then we would be on the fourth take of something, and then a fucking fire truck would go by, and I used to want to kill myself. So,
yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, yesterday I had an experience where the film kid jumped right out. I was recording a podcast with Aaron the Bland podcast, horror reviews. We were talking about 1987, Clive Barker's Hellraiser, one of my favorite horror movies. Yeah. And the thing is like, so in college I took a class where we would analyze films through queer theory, primarily. Of these, some of them were horror films, and so anytime I watch a film and really try to analyze and get to the bottom of it, I gotta have that queer theory lens that's on some level. And Clive Barker is no different, because this is a movie based on a book that he wrote in the early 80s regarding, its commentaries about pain, pleasure, sex. You kind of have to put it in the context of the AIDS epidemic, that talks about his own comments on the BDSM community, which he was involved in. And so I was nerding out. Like I couldn't even stop myself. I had a 10-page basically book report done up about Hellraiser. and I'm like feeling myself having to reel in the film nerd as I'm recording the podcast. But it was very fun. The episode is out now, so go give it a listen, y'all.
Oh, period. And we could talk gay lenses and movies all day. I got papers galore from college and grad school.
And we should do something for the
Galore.
Patreon. We could do a little Patreon exclusive about some
Hey, put me
movies.
on a Patreon. Break
Let's
me off a
do
little
it.
percentage.
Okay. Hey. All right, real quick. Before we take our break, I just have to read this confession. It's from Steve Rogers. I typically only fuck guys with a nose piercing and will come hardest when they tell me it smells dirty. Thank you for that. That's a fun confession.
Work.
I clean my nose ring pretty often. Mine does not stink.
I know people will say kink shaming is what floats your boat is your business.
Listen,
But
girl, you like it, I love it.
I will say, girl, it's a little avant-garde.
It's different. It's a little
It's a
different.
bit out of the norm. And if that's you, like, I guess there's no harm in it. But I'm like, are you orgasming the hardest when they tell you that their own nose piercing smells?
I think so. I think that's it. Yeah.
I'm,
He's
I'm
fucking guys with the nose piercing. So I think it's like, they're like, oh, my nose is so stinky. Because they do get kind of funky. The nose piercing do get funky if you don't.
But like,
if you
are
don't.
you also smelling it? And
No,
that
that's
is
a question. That's a good
or
question.
just knowing that it smells. You see, here's the thing. Once I get past the judgmental, like, and here's the thing. I'm the kind of person where I'm a human being. I do judge people. And Steve Rogers, there is a little bit of judgment here, but I want you to know it's not like a malicious judgment where I'm like, oh girl, you're like, it's judgment. It's judgment in the sense where I'm like, I'm going to be honest and be like, this is a little strange for me. It's a little taboo for me. However, I'm not going to persecute you for it.
Oh, hell yeah.
But I'm going to ask a series of questions. Like, do you ask them to take it out so you can get a whiff? Like, is that part of it as well? Y'all, it's only one sentence on this. And like, that was the only confession. But I do also kind of just live for dropping that tidbit of information and then dipping.
Right, which Steve...
And then under Steve Rogers, too, he doesn't even have a nose ring. Steve Rogers.
Captain America. Maybe there's a world where Captain America has a nose ring, you know?
I don't want a Captain America with a nose ring.
There was like a punk rock alternate universe in the Marvel world. I feel like that is the most likely one where he has a nose ring.
I'll throw in a confession of my own. I didn't want a black Captain America.
You don't like Falcon?
I don't want a black Captain America. For what? For what? Did you see, what was it? Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
Yeah. Well, yes. Did I watch that one? That's the TV show, right?
It was the one, yeah. It came after...
With the Flag Smasher girl who was making a lot of good points. And then all of a sudden they had her blow up like a bus full of kids or whatever.
Right.
Just to have us be like, oh no, she's evil. She's gone too far. When before she was making very valid points.
Like extremely valid points. And I used to have an Instagram. I mean, I technically still have it. I don't post on it anymore. Maybe I should. But I used to have an Instagram page that I made during quarantine called the Fab Club. It was like film and book club.
Oh, you should do like a Substack.
What do you mean?
Do a Substack and do like a film and book club on Substack. I'd read it. I would subscribe and read it.
And, you know, we'll see. We'll see. It was a good thing to do in quarantine because like nobody had anything to do. Now everybody's like all over the place and people say they want to be a part of things. And I believe that, but schedules do not always permit like commitment for things like the extra, which is kind of sad because book clubs are kind of sickening and media clubs in general, because, you know, books, movies, TV shows to get together, talk about is always fun and nice and everything. But anyways, I wrote a little review of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I was in grad school at the time. And I went to grad school at USC. I was in the Cinema and Media Studies in the School of Cinematic Arts, which, if you are not familiar with the film worlds and all of that and what that means, it's the cream of the cream
It's the be all
when it
end
comes to
all.
film schools. Like it's a thing. I don't say that to toot my own horn, although I did do that. But also to say like there's a journal there to publish. So, being asked, when it was like a student journal, people asked me to like write something about this show because someone who was an editor saw my blurb on that Instagram page and was like, oh, I would, you should expand on these thoughts and yada, yada, yada. So I write the thing. And mind you, you don't get paid for writing essays for academic journals, period. It doesn't matter. You don't get paid. It's like the whole thing in the academic world. So I was like, write it. I turned it in, and then they tell me that my points were too polemic because I was, talking about how this is like performative liberalism, that there's no real criticism here, that it absolves like government institutions of doing fucked up things like mass displacement and colonialism, and these are the legacies and yada yada yada. And here's how a Black Captain America, a Black figure, like diversity in media and Hollywood is, not something that's super substantial when there's like not an intent to it, that you can't just plop a Black person into a traditionally white position and then think that radical change is going to happen. And because the radical change happened with Obama. And I wrote that and I said that. And then I also critiqued Marvel, and I also critiqued, the figureheads of Marvel. And they basically told me, they were like, this doesn't have an academic focus. It's a critique, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, first of all, don't ever tell me that anything that I wrote doesn't have an academic focus. Are you crazy? I was like, secondly, you asked me to write this.
Yeah, I
And I was
think you
like,
can
and
critique and
because
still be academic. I don't understand why.
yeah, they wanted me to throw film theory into it and I was like, I could talk about Bazin, and I could talk about I could talk like Saeed. I could do the theory, but I'm like, none of that applies here. Like, you asked me to write this because anyways. That's how I felt about Falcon and the Winter Soldier and all of that. I ended up pulling that paper from being published because I said I wasn't going to rewrite it. I said, if you think I'm being too polemic, then I'm not the writer for you, because I'm gonna just tell it like it TI is each and every time. And also in grad school, I was burnt out and tired. And when they wanted to do it, I was like, I'm not getting paid to write this. I got a bunch of other shit to do.
Yeah.
And this is something that I already did you a favor writing the first draft of this. So I'm not about to go back and forth 5-6 times with the revisions. And I understood that's the process for academia in general. You always have to do it. I just was over it at the time. But yeah, Steve Rogers, good for you, girl. Work. I hope that continues to work out for you.
Get your
And
rocks off, girl.
yeah, and I know this is a platform where people can submit confessions, but let's consider sharing less about ourselves.
No, let's actually consider sharing more. I want to know more. Confess more. Send more. What else gets your rocks off? We want to know all of it. I love that. I want to hear more. But let's take a break.
Take a break.
And we're back. Marvel has a whole place in the military industrial complex, and the way that Hollywood gets films made with, the military directly involved in the scripting process and the filming process. If you want to use one of their military vehicles, you have to submit a whole inquiry. And then if they don't like how your script is saying it, you have to do X, Y, and Z to get it approved. There's tons of critique about Marvel, but I will say this. Outside of the MCU, which we're getting into the advice to the star segment, but the first thing that I have to say is not about the stars. It is about specifically the new X-Men relaunch, because I have thoughts. I have feelings. As you all know, I love the X-Men. Those are my best friends. Those are my family. Those are my sisters.
Same.
And we are coming to the end of the Krakoa era, Krakoa being one of the most divisive in some ways, and also I would say maybe decisive in how it framed mutants as the othered people. The Krakoa era was diverse. It was beautiful. The art was amazing. We got to see a whole bunch of new characters come back, old and new characters, very diverse teams, lots of writers of color, putting in their 2 cents, and world building like we haven't seen before. all that to say, the new X-Men relaunch is like just a complete cash in back at the 90s, which sure, X-Men 97, whatever. I just don't see how we can go from one of the most diverse and one of the most out there status quos, and you're pulling us back, and we're just gonna end up back. Oh, mutants are hated and feared. I'm tired. I'm tired of being in that damn school. We had a whole nation. We had more than a nation. We had Mars, a whole planet of, both mutants of color and also visible mutants, living and thriving, a whole different culture that they had, all that world building, and we're just throwing it out just to go back to, oh, well, the humans don't like us. They're going to send some sentinels after us. I'm tired.
Yeah. There's things happening there. The thing that's been distracting about the whole thing is that they fired the writer, right?
Borromeo for they fired him for 97, but I will say they're the lead writers and artists for the new X-Men relaunch in the comics. I like their work. While I may not like the idea of the relaunch and where it's going, I like the writers. I like Gail Simone. I like Jed McKay. I like these people involved in the creative team. So I'm reserving most judgment until I can actually read and see what's happening. But yes, they did fire Borromeo. We're not sure why. He had some questionable things about Sunspot and how apparently focusing on the fact that Sunspot's a Black Brazilian takes away his Brazilian heritage, and that's why he hired like a white Brazilian to voice him. Borromeo has also had some other weird takes regarding X-Men and fandom. So
I thought it was, maybe I shouldn't be spreading rumors, but I thought it was because they found out that Bo had an OnlyFans account.
Well, they found that out. He's been speaking publicly about that for like months at this point. So I don't think that's also why I don't think that's why he got fired, because the timing is off.
See, knowing about it and then, like still having going on is one thing. But when you know about it and then other people, GP, general public, finds out about it and it kind of becomes a thing, then that's where I see where people are like, okay, well, we're just going to
Well, I feel like the general public knew about it as well. Like when he had been bringing it up, it was all kosher, So I'm really not sure why he got fired. It's odd.
Good luck, Bo.
Yeah, I mean, apparently he was being abusive to staff when he was working on The Witcher. There's like a whole host of odd things surrounding Bo DeMeo, but this is allegedly, this is all stuff that I've read on Twitter and in various threads and whatnot. But I say all this to say we don't know why. So I'm not going to put any concrete evidence or any concrete definitions or whatever for why he got fired. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. Allegedly.
But I will also say, the next thing I wanted to talk about was I read this thing about Millie Bobby Brown. She has a pseudonym where she goes on Yelp and writes reviews for places that she doesn't like. She self-proclaimed herself as a woke Karen. My advice to her, she needs to focus that energy into her Zionist castmates and her friends and her fiance. Let's talk about that. Focus the energy there instead of reviewing businesses that you don't like. And that's all I have to say on the matter for her.
I saw that on TikTok. And for me, I'm like, I don't care how, I feel like ever since the rise of the Karen as a cultural phenomenon, in terms of how we name it, we know that, white women have been generally, or some white women have been generally terrorizing service workers and people.
And people in public, just they've been terrorizing everybody, the general public, people walking down the
street.
And
that's just history. That's just history. So for me, it's like, I feel like now, like the contemporary, the contemporary white women of today are, particularly like millennial and Gen Z ones are like, I'm so anti-Karen. And like, I get it. Here's the thing. I'm just going to speak plainly. There's times when, like, for example, like Black people will like make this joke or this like comment about whiteness, white people, the white things that they do. And one of the things that just kind of I'm always just like roll my eyes at is when white people try to get in on the joke. And I felt like recently, like the whole Karen thing, like there are TikTokers where like who are white women who like cosplay as Karens and this whole like I'm socially aware, I'm self-aware, so I get to make fun of these, these women because I'm a white woman and I get the joke. And I don't know, and maybe it's because I went to a school like Oberlin College, but I'm just like not easily impressed. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I get the haha, sometimes I laugh. I don't like though, and I don't. And one of the ones who there's like a lady on TikTok who's like she always has the glasses and the visor, and she's like a golf, like she's always at a country club. I don't know what
Yeah,
her username is.
I don't know.
I'll try to send you the video.
I'm not gonna lie. For me, TikTok has kind of fell off. I just feel like I haven't been opening it lately. Maybe it's
Oh,
because I've been busy moving. Honestly, I think that might be it. Because I'm like, "Ugh, I don't got time for this. I got boxes
I'm
to
having a
unpack."
2.5 on TikTok. But anyways, I say that to say like sometimes I'll laugh. I think it's funny, but also like I think it's just like the whole like oh white people like I'm in on the joke.
I'm a Karen, but
It's
fun.
just it always reads as a little corny to me. And I want to say I think it's different than something that like Sabrina Breer does, like I like Sabrina Breer, where
Yeah,
she's like, this is the shit that like the girls just do. Like this is the silly nonsense of the girls. She's not like, no, like I'm a white woman who gets it. She's just like, I'm a girl who's lived a life and like I get it. And I think that's the difference. So when she's like talking about leaving like reviews and like comments or something, I'm like, aren't don't you have work to do? Do you know what I mean? And I get what she was saying about like being a public figure and like not being able to express yourself like all the time because you do like it is very easy to get that national attention if you speak to people rudely and stuff like that. So I can understand wanting to have some sort of release, but it just will never not read as a prominent, affluent, wealthy, young white woman who's just like, this person didn't cater to my every need. And so now I'm going to shit talk you on Yelp. Like, and also, like, I feel like telling that story, like, it wasn't the payoff that she thinks it was.
I feel
And this
like
is the
if
thing
she had
where,
told this story a couple of years ago, back when it came out that like Lord was writing those chicken finger reviews, you know what I mean? Then people may have had a little more fun with it. But the boat has sailed. Like I'm over
yeah.
celebrities doing these things on the side. I really don't care.
And that's the thing about celebrity culture is that they sometimes don't realize how out of touch they are. And sometimes they really think they get it. And then like they really don't get it. And so to me, it just kind of read as like, I'm a white woman who likes to complain. And it's just like, that doesn't make you more interesting to me. It
Yeah.
just makes you more the same. But I mean, work Millie Bobby Brown, you probably should, have something to say about that one castmate or the two. I mean, there was another
I
one who
think a
like
couple
support
of them. There's like most of them. Like the whole Stranger Things group. I feel like a lot of them are doing some weird shit right
I just
now.
need to wrap that show up. I think it's to the point where now it's for me, it was always kind of a weird show.
The hype has died down. I'm not waiting this long for some whatever payoff to the end of the season. I really don't care at this point.
I don't think there is a payoff. And this is something completely different now. I just always thought it was never that good. It was always okay. And I think the most interesting it got, like, I still was a little indifferent towards it. I just didn't feel the need to
Yeah,
like, but although I guess I did because I did finish the series, but I did it while I was, like I had a weekend of like
I was
chores to
kind of
get.
watching it just to watch it, not
Yeah,
necessarily that I was like in love with it. And for me, I love a telekinetic girl, but I'm gonna need a little more. The powers were always just like, push one thing, nose starts bleeding, we're done here. No, give me
yeah.
carry. I want people flying. I want shit getting rocked. I need more for my TK.
Yeah. And I don't know, I think it was one of the writers or maybe it was someone else, but like the fact that like they won't like they're clearly like keeping like all the cast in and like not killing people off or killing them off and then bringing them back to life. And it's just too safe. And it's hard to have a show like that and have people continuously care when there are no stakes. Like, yes, it sucks to lose characters we really love, but there needs to be stakes in a show.
Yeah,
And
not
a
everybody
show
can be
like that, the
safe.
stakes are life or death. And so there needs to be death. If people are always living at the end of each season, then for a show that's this expensive and like has this many seasons, they have like what, 5 seasons, 4 or 5 seasons?
Something like that.
They need to have they need to have some stakes. And it seems like, yeah, for a while Netflix is just mostly interested in the money grab. So they're like, we're just gonna keep these kids locked in a contract and,
Yeah.
keep the money like flowing in.
Which
But
let's talk about money grabs right now.
yeah,
Avatar. Have you seen it?
I saw the first 2 episodes.
Thoughts?
Admittedly, it wasn't as terrible as I
As
thought it was
everyone's
going to
saying
be.
it, right?
Granted, I've only seen the first 2 episodes. Um, but it is also not great.
It's not. And I will say in that first episode when Gran is reciting the opening lines, that may have been some of the worst acting I have ever seen in
It
my
was so
goddamn
jarring.
life. I almost turned off the TV, but I said, I said I was going to sit down and watch a couple episodes. I'm going to sit down and watch a couple episodes. I think everybody needed more time with that script. The only people who are sure of their lines, Iroh, Zuko, uh, Daniel Day Kim.
Yeah, I struggle because I do think we need to get like fresh blood in the entertainment industry, especially where like underrepresented actors are concerned, right? Black actors, indigenous actors, Asian actors. That being said, let's get underrepresented fresh blood that can act. I was looking at some of these performances and I was like, mama, like not even like trying to, because I can get behind, the actor taking a different approach to a character than
Of
from the source
course.
material. Okay, sure, great. But if you're going to change it, do it well.
Let's not have Disney Channel original movie acting. You know what I
Like,
mean?
let's do it well. And I don't think it was well done.
Yeah.
I think the actor who plays Zuko captures like I think um
The bratty
the
essence for
entitlement.
me. He got
Yeah,
that
the
like
bratty
brattiness
entitlement of Zuko in that first book. Like he pretty much had that down. But yeah, and also they've changed so much
to
that
condense, like we got the secret tunnel in like episode 2 or 3 when that didn't happen until like book 2. Yeah. There's things.
it changed so much where like we're not gonna get the character arcs that are in the original source material. Like Sokka being like a misogynist, Sokka being sexist, like that wasn't for shits and giggles.
You
Like
had a
that was
point.
for a reason. Like his mother was killed, his father and the men like left. He was the eldest boy in his village, and he felt powerless when they got invaded. And his sister, growing up and realizing, she's a waterbender and she has this power that he doesn't have, that's envy, and
When
that
he's
envy
supposed to be the
translates
man of the
into
village.
right. And so he's leveraging his social position as a man to sort of overcompensate for his non-bending ability. And then as we go through that character arc, not only does he come to realize he's a fool for that and that women are, incredibly smart and strategist and very powerful and with or without bending powers, we also see him sort of accept that, he matures and he accepts that this is the world that we're in and we actually need to pull together and, you know, play to each of our strengths for us to beat this like larger like over like common enemy.
Mhm.
And it's also through his romantic relationships that he realizes that, these young women are very powerful, right? Even if they aren't benders, right? Suki was a warrior. Yue was brave. She sacrificed herself for her people. How do we get to that character arc and evolution if it's not there from the beginning? Like, you know what I mean? Like the whole reason Sokka is a funny character, he comes up with these jokes, is because he's overcompensating for something. And I wasn't getting that from this adaptation. Like
Not at all.
there wasn't a lot of depth there.
Which is also something I feel like is happening with a lot of media right now. A lot of people thinking that they can't interact with something that isn't necessarily saying something positive 100% of the time. You know, people were saying this was Scott Pilgrim and they were tearing it apart and not understanding the fact that, yeah, Scott is supposed to be a terrible person at the beginning of the series. And that's okay. We're there to see the growth. We're there to see him go from a loser, from a zero to a hero, you know? And I feel like a lot of people are afraid to engage with things that make them feel the tiniest bit uncomfortable, that don't 100% say good things about a person, or, you know, the representation has to be of like a golden character, you know. People can start things. We're allowed to be uncomfortable. People can be shitty characters. That doesn't say that we're endorsing it. You know what I mean? There's arcs to tell. There's stories to comment on. There's themes to comment on. I want to move past that.
The other thing is that it's a money issue. You know, you need time to watch a character develop. And the more time, you know, i.e., the more episodes, means the more money. And what I felt from Netflix in particular is that they really tried to move this thing along and test the waters of the first season, and, you know, before they move forward. And of course, they just greenlit book 2 and book 3. And so I'm hoping now that they've seen the response to it, that they will actually take more time and put more money like into it. But also, this is Netflix and the strikes just happened, and, you know, things are really weird. And I feel like right now they're weird for several reasons. Money is always an issue. So sometimes we don't get this depth, this evolution like we do back when TV was 15, 20 episodes, and, you know, that was the golden era of television. This right now is it's all just a mess.
Yeah.
But in a way, it also feels like we're in a cultural war. And I tweeted this yesterday, but I said the overturning of affirmative action and overturning Roe versus Wade, to me, signaled the very beginning of a new era of contemporary conservatism, where I think a lot of people have this resentment towards diversity and towards representation and inclusion and sort of these progressive politics.
Mm-hmm.
And for me personally, I think it kind of like really started to bubble in a different way with the election of Obama. Like, right when Obama was the president, that's when we had the rise of like a new frontier in LGBTQ rights, and the conversations around pronouns and identity and gender started to get more complex and more nuanced. And a lot of people felt like that they were being, you know, forced into an agenda and forced to coexist with people and acknowledge other people's existence, which they didn't like. And not even just cis, white, wealthy people. I mean, people across race or across ethnicity just really, I think, felt this like content that they had to play nice with people for a while. And then Trump came along and was just so outwardly adversarial.
Yes.
And just so blatant and like confident in his combative and his whole sort of counterculturist attitude, which definitely like a lot of people are into. A lot of people want to be counterculturist. They want to, you know, be incendiary because they can go viral when people disagree with you, et cetera, et cetera. They see the benefits of that. And it's kind of like in The Boys, right? When Homelander for so long, he was like, he wanted to be loved and he wanted all this attention, but he was really terrible because he didn't have a family and he was really insecure and he was resentful because he felt like he was pretending to play nice for the cameras to get people to love him. And then when he let his horribleness out and he saw that he was backed and he was supported and that he sort of connected with this audience of far right incels.
It's my money and I want it now type,
right?
You know,
then that emboldened him in a sense, and I think that's a really good measure of what the culture has been in the last decade. Like we've really have gone through the ups and downs, um and where that relates to media for me is I think we're really seeing these entertainment entities, and not even just in entertainment, like Lululemon, for example, like the CEO said, "Oh, we don't care about inclusivity. We're not making size inclusive clothing. We're not going to be using Black models." And then HBO hired that new CEO who also said he didn't care about diversity and was snatching Black shows and other like POC shows off the platform and stuff like that, where people feel emboldened now to express their disdain for inclusion, to feel comfort in their conservative values, and to be braggadocious about it in a way. And we're seeing that happen in media where they're like, we don't have to really do this because our government is doing this and they say that it's okay. And this all seems to be like falling in line. And even Marvel now recently said like they're only focusing on material that they know is going to perform well.
Yeah.
When you say that, knowing the context of your incel fan base of white, straight, cis men who have done nothing but degrade every project that leads somebody who's not a white, cis, straight man.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you play into that, I think it's very, very dangerous.
It's a very slippery slope.
Move. I'm sorry.
Oh, Mushu. That's a
Say
sweetheart.
hi. Here's the attention. Now go away. It's a very slippery slope, and it's definitely something I think everyone should be cognizant of. When I was a TA at USC, I would tell my students all the time, like, you can't just analyze a film. You can't just look at it in the context of it being made in Hollywood. You have to look at the cultural context. You have to look at the political context. You have to look at the historical context, because things are not produced, movies, TV shows are not produced out of nothing.
In a
They're not just
vacuum.
produced because they want to make money. They're produced out of all these different political and historical and social and economic factors weaving together, and informing the content that's getting made. So the people are like, we're going to push this and we're going to push that. And so it's really important to be just as staunch and just as vocal as these counterculturists, of these people who don't want to see us move forward, who want to keep us regressing. Because at the end of the day, there are people who feel so small in their lives that the only way they can feel their life have any meaning is if they know someone else is suffering more than they are.
And
We
they
have
know
to,
they're loud. They know they have that voice.
right. And so when they're doing all of that complaining and, they're always going to be doing that. But the biggest danger are the people who are complacent, the people who are like, oh, this is just how it is. And you're just being too sensitive. And it's not that big of a deal. Like it is a big of a deal. And not just in terms of what movies get made, but the ways that you vote and how our politicians move about like Palestine. Like there's always going to be the people who are very, very for something and very, very against something. But the way corporations work, the way politicians work, is that they're always targeting those people who stand somewhere in the middle, who haven't taken a position. And if your position with everything is to throw your hands up and say, well, they're just going to do whatever they want. I don't have any power. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to blah, blah, blah. It's just the way that it is. Or if you haven't unlearned any of those internalized habits of white supremacy, then it's going to be very difficult for us to change our future. And I don't think everything needs to be this. And this is what the far right people do. They try to seem like, oh, that we're the ones who are doing the censoring, that you can't say this and you can't say that. That's not the case. You just need to be a not shitty person and get fair opportunities. That shouldn't be controversial. But they, become inflammatory and they make it seem like that's what it is. And so I think it's very important for everyone, not just in the context of media, Hollywood, entertainment, but for everything. You have to get educated. Like you just have to. You have to survey the context, the broader context of everything that's happening right now, politically, socially, economically, and take it all in. And when you do that and you see what's being connected and what, it's important that you use your voice and your voting power and whatnot to make your position known.
Yep, because they will use that, all that blaming that they do about us being the ones censoring it, they will use that exact same argument. All the while, they're the ones burning books, banning books, keeping things out of schools, making sure that people aren't learning about the important shit. They're doing exactly what they're portraying that we're doing, and they're just sweeping it under the rug while we argue.
Right. And if you say, oh, there's nothing I can do, they're going to do it. Well, when you take a seat, right, and you move out the side, of course it's going to move forward because you've gotten out of their way. You have to stay in their way and you have to keep vocalizing all of that. And, that's what I tried to teach the new generation of filmmakers and film scholars and stuff like that who are emerging. I mean, I'm also part of that generation, but it's so important. It's so important to look at, especially Hollywood and media and stuff like that. Like it's a media machine and, there's propaganda there and there are people within that industry who are genuinely trying to change it. And so, it goes back to not everything is black and white.
Mm-hmm.
It's all very complicated. But at the very least, girl, go out there, get educated, have a voice, stand for something, and make sure that whatever opinion you have, it's something that's informed. It's something you have an opinion because you researched it, and you didn't just research the things you wanted to find and the things you wanted to see. You research the historical facts. You research, and you got counter opinions, and you weighed all of that. And I think if you do that, some things become very, to me, obvious where your stance should be.
Yep. Amen. You have any other celebrity government advice things you want to bring up, or that's kind of all I had?
I was trying to think what is in the current events of today. I mean, I think that's all right.
That's all I got. The last thing I had was that Tyson closed down a factory in Iowa and made a plan to hire asylum seekers from other countries. And of course, the anti woke crowd, as they are known, is what's it called? Banning Tyson. They're boycotting Tyson, which is so stupid, girl. Because if y'all were doing your jobs, like you said this before filming, because I said I wanted to briefly touch on this. You said, well, if they were doing their damn jobs, they would have gotten closed down, and that's about it. They took your job, girl. Cry about it. I really,
Yeah.
I'm so tired of interacting with them. They piss me off so much.
And also, the people who are saying they're stealing our jobs. It's never somebody whose job is being stolen. It's like, girl, like,
yeah. The reason the jobs are being offered to other people is because nobody wanted to do the jobs because you all think it's below you to work in a factory. That's why.
and the real enraging part is, I haven't seen the news about the Tyson stuff like that, but generally when this happens, it's like they're bringing in these, migrants or asylum seekers, stuff like undocumented people to exploit their labor. Like
Yes.
it's not a good thing. So I guess you can boycott it, sure, but sure, I'm just like, go off, sis. But for me, it's like, yeah, we need like stricter labor laws because I don't think just because you bring in
Yeah, I don't think Tyson's doing it out of the
non-citizen
good of their
workers,
heart, you know?
that, yeah, you should be able to pay them pennies on the dollar. Like, we need to raise the minimum wage, and then we need to ensure a minimum wage for people working in this country, regardless of their citizenship
Mm-hmm.
status.
Yep. Amen. Well, that brings me to the end. This has been so lovely.
Well, thank you, Jake. It's always great talking to you, with you, about
Likewise.
you, behind your
Of
back.
course, no matter what they say.
Yeah.
I don't care what anyone says. You're great.
Yeah. Well, you should believe them. They're right.
Oh, do you want to promote anything?
Um, what would I like to promote? What do I have going on right now? Well, I am currently writing not one, but two screenplays. One a pilot, another a feature film. that I'm writing, and just manifest me as I submit these things to competitions and agencies that I get me an agent this year. Okay. So y'all keep me in your
Okay.
manifestations, keep me in your prayers, keep me in whatever positive vibes that you exude out into the world, into the universe. So that, I can get in this industry and start making the shit we want to see. I'm exploring comedy again, so I might be coming to an open mic near you in Chicago. We will see. I mean, this year is feeling very fruitful for opportunity. I'm getting that vibe, and I'm working really hard to get a lot of those things moving. So I do have some things in store for you all, some cute outfits, some adventures. But follow me on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter at THEAFROB. And you can stay up to date with me there. I'm usually giving my opinions on media, on current events, on pop culture, and things like that. So if you like what I have to say and you want to hear more, you can stay up to date on my Instagram, on my TikTok, and on my Twitter. I post on all of those socials regularly.
Amen. I've been Jake. You can follow me at Poison Touch Pod. You can also follow me over at Baby Daddy's Pod, where me and Amario are currently reviewing For the Love of Delph Season 2. After that, we're going to go back and review Season 1. And then after that, we're thinking about reviewing the quote-unquote sexually fluid season of Are You the One, where everybody was bisexual and having a grand old, messy, poly, fun shenanigans. Great seasons of reality TV. I love talking about reality TV. It's fun. Reality TV really is a microcosm for the things that we experience in the real world and kind of a hyper-focused pressure cooker situation. So I think it's great to analyze and look at the things that happen there. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, give me 5 stars. We aim always for 5s. Leave me a little review. And if you want to see video versions of every episode, extra episodes, and Patreon exclusives, hit me over at Patreon. That's patreon.com/poisontouchpod for $5 a month. You can get access to a whole bunch of goodies. And I was thinking about doing a book club because I like a book club. A book club is fun.
Yeah, book clubs are great.
So, if you're interested, you want to suggest a book, let's get into it. Hey, y'all, not to abruptly end the episode, but when I tell you we ended up going on a tangent about Twilight and housing in New York City and LA and influencers and books and book clubs and how to comprehend a million, we went on such a big tangent, and this episode was already, veering on too long. Also, I've been moving, so it's been taking me a lot to get stuff, so I'm still getting on track. So I ended up just chopping it and making it a Patreon exclusive. So if you're interested in it, it's a good little, and yeah, that'll be on the Patreon. So head over to patreon.com/poisontouchpod, $5 a month to get some bonus content. And I'll see y'all next time. In April, we have Aaron the Bland joining me from Aaron the Bland podcast. We did that Hellraiser episode a couple weeks ago, so that'll be the next episode. Make sure you get your questions in for that. Go submit your own questions at poisontouch.com. I'll catch y'all next time.